welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help you close your personal and professional gaps by hearing how others have done it. I'm your host, Chris Burkhardt, and today we're thrilled to have Mac Macleod on the show. Welcome to the show, Mac. We've got a lot to cover.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I know we share more than a common connection or two. We've been in the Mid-Atlantic for a long time together. We've talked business shop for years, been in CEO masterminds together. Heck, we've even done podcasts together at this point. And I think what we share in common is that we're both Inc. 5000 co-founders or founders. And I just appreciate you coming on Outside Insights today. What I find from listeners is they just learn from our stories, our mistakes, the things we share, A little bit about Mac, and then we'll get into it. He's co-founder of Carvertise. It's a media company that specializes in rideshare advertising. Founded in 2012. And today, Carvertise is a multi-million-dollar business experiencing triple-digit growth, probably more if I know Mac. And now he's scaling it nationally, has 500,000 registered drivers, and has, campaigns, marketing campaigns across the company with lots of different brand partners, but folks like Netflix, 7-Eleven, and DraftKings. Mac, why don't you start with just telling everybody what Carvertise does and what's energizing you today? It's a good way to start.
Yeah. So Carvertise is a marketing company, media company that helps brands get their message seen, increase their visibility and exposure at places and times that matter most to them, using wrapped vehicles, rideshare cars, Uber cars, Lyft cars. So we have a network of 500,000 drivers all across the country who sign up in campaigns, marketing campaigns that our clients, the Netflixes, the Coca-Colas, the Raising Cane's of the world, when they want to make a big splash and they want to do it in a way that's unique and that has a different type of targetability aspect to it, that's what we do. Started the business 11 years ago, and here we are today, still going at it, still chipper and energetic, and waking up every day thinking of the challenges. So I think what you said, or what you asked of what gives you energy, I'm a big believer in, it's just a blessing to be alive and be here. And you gotta enjoy your time here. You gotta appreciate your time here. You have to have fun. If you're in such a fortunate position where that's what you can prioritize is purpose. And I think building is very meaningful. Solving tough challenges is very meaningful. And I think, part of the joy of entrepreneurship, if you're cut out for it, is the picture keeps on changing. The problems change, the players change, the circumstances change, and you enjoy solving different types of problems, that arise at different stages.
So I've been thinking about one question for you, and it's that I hope you'll allow. I think there's a price or a tax to be paid to bootstrap a company and to get it to mid-market, to scale it, to take it through the paces that you're saying about the privilege of waking up this day, this quarter with today's problems and opportunities and going at it. I love where you are. And I'm hoping that we both can address that tack, because I get asked that question all the time. What's that price along the way? What do you think You said, I think you guys create real value for your paying customer. Is it? It's a unique way for them to create awareness of events, or it's much deeper than that, isn't it? Isn't there a greater value that you create?
I mean, it's as complicated or as simple as that. It's making a big splash at events that are
Yeah.
meaningful to our clients. So the way the product has evolved over time is it used to be general out of home exposure. We would wrap a bunch of high mileage vehicles and they would just drive around creating memorable impressions. And where the product has started to veer over time is more towards being event focused, conference focused, sports game focused, where we'll have a lot of cars in one place at one time. And it's just to amplify the wow factor.
Yeah.
So it really is to make a big splash and to stand out in a different way, to break the mold. And it's marketing, it's promotion, it's branding. And, there are certainly layers of complexity that come in below that of impression counting and digital retargeting and web lift attribution, seeing who is exposed to the cars, how many people visit the website, and that isn't to.
I think what you're proving out is that there is ROI for it as well. That you're
totally.
being asked to.
I fully trust that clients are very smart, and a lot of them are really growing. Our book of business is growing through enlarging client contracts where they'll do it once and then want to go bigger somewhere else. And I don't think that they're doing that for a reason, because they're seeing that there's impact.
Of course, it's not ego, it's impact. If I'm hoping this is interesting to you, if you think about the last 12 years, what part of getting this business going was what do you remember most fondly? What part of the 12 years? What part of the journey?
There are fond parts and parts that are not so fond every step of the way.
We'll get to them, right?
I think, listen, in the early days, it was great not having bills and not having real responsibilities and just being able to discount everything and provide the service for free and do every part of the business like that. That was fun, it was low risk, just hyped on the dream of what this business could become. And, that early stage euphoria was good enough.
How long was that era? Not that we'll stay here long with questioning, but
I would say that was a good 3 or 4 years in the beginning.
Yeah.
A good 3 or 4 years of.
You can get a lot done on enthusiasm, can't you?
Yeah. Hype can carry you a long way. Just hype. Absolutely. And it's like adrenaline. It's like a slow release adrenaline that can just keep you charged up and amped for a long time. And then,
Mac, I think what's really important is, there's only 2 people on this podcast, but there's only 2 people here who have worked for free for more than a year to make their idea work, right? Like, not that that's where you are today. It's not about that. It's just to be committed to this idea, to enjoy this blessing. You needed to work that way. You needed to act that way. You needed to be that way. And I think that's part of what needs to be told through all this. And there's plenty of time to think about, the next step. But, it's just an interesting ride. And I don't know many, and that's why you're here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So there was fond points, like, I'll tell you, winning our first client was a high point. Getting our first drivers to sign up and, oh my God, this is real. That was a high watermark. Created the
Making the
website.
idea actually happen. Yeah.
Just seeing real forms of traction early on, and like I tell you, contracts come in every day now, and it's normalized. It doesn't, the butterflies and the, oh my God, this is so cool. You become conditioned to it. It becomes normal. But in those early days, everything was winning the Super Bowl. Now, like the Super Bowl now, and just the line, the goalpost keeps changing. It keeps getting pushed back.
Moving the damn goalpost, right?
Yeah. And that's part of the chase. Like, that's part of the journey. Like,
I've heard you write and speak a little bit about your own leadership journey, and I think it fits very nicely because I think in the beginning we're all things, right? Talk a little bit about your leadership journey and kind of it makes it more contemporary to where you are today. I know you're in a very different spot today, and it kind of contrasts nicely to doing everything and being excited about the first driver. That story of how you've had to adapt and change along the way. They always say that's the hardest part, by the way. The first decision we make is to run a business. The second is to be CEO. And I think they're distinct decisions, and it doesn't mean as much until you start to grow and scale. And I know that's where you are.
So, I think my understanding is it's called situational leadership, where the style of leadership that's best to do or best to deploy is very dependent upon what is going on, what's the size of the team, what the goal is. So there's no one size fits all. And I think that what good leadership was when we first started was just being brave and going out there and doing everything and really being being the first at the office, being the last to leave with your band of 4 people, 5 people, and you're showing them, how to wield the sword and
that it can be done.
And you're in the trenches with them and you're doing it the best. So like leadership is like you lead you out in front and your team is watching you as the captain actually do the activities to emulate what the leader is doing. And I think in our early days, that's what we organically did. And then I think as the staff grows and the team grows, and granted, we're not a huge organization. There's 55 people, but there's enough people where the style of leadership that I know is effective has changed dramatically. Is, hop to the other extreme. Right now, if you try to lead everything by example and you try to show everyone how it's really done, that's silly. That's bad leadership, because the people that you want in the room with you.
You can't rent cars. You can't do the books. You can't do you can do some things, but right.
If you're driving the thought leadership and the execution behind all the facets of the business, and generically speaking, just call that operations, sales, finance, HR, product, engineering, customer success or account management. Like, if you really are the thought leader and you are the mastermind behind the execution, I guarantee you have the wrong team. Like, I guarantee you that you are short selling what the organization, you're shortchanging what the organization can become, because you're not getting the right people in the room who are bringing the vision to you, who are augmenting your original vision with what their side of the business can do and become to help drive your vision even further. And then leadership changes more into a support role where you align on what these leaders are to accomplish by when. That supports the overall vision and the goals of what you're trying to get to by when. And then you have to trust them to be able to get it done. You have to trust in their ability to execute. The only guarantee is that things are not going to go to plan and something's going to pop up and this account's going to go sideways and this new opportunity is going to come on the table and this person left the organization and this person now is joining the organization. Like there's always volatility. There's always change, and toggling the right balance behind sticking to your guns on what the goals are versus when to be flexible and let the changing playing field affect where the goalpost is a juggling act to balance while you're doing the dance. But I think overall, though, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got the mic.
Overall, I think that just leadership changes a lot. And, when there's 55 employees, when there's 550 employees, I have a feeling that, the style of leadership that will be needed more then is more marketing, more cheerleading, more extolling the values all the way to the front lines, and becoming slightly more figureheadish might be the right style of leadership at that point in the game.
I've heard it's that our job becomes we repeat a small set of rules and we catch people living the values and carrying out the plans. I don't know if it's always that way, but it can be. It can be.
Yeah. So, I'm just a student of the game. I enjoy learning. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy building and growing alongside people that I really like, and have fun, showing up to work every day, getting to work alongside, that's a big part of it too, is like you get to pick who you work with. And, you could call it a culture match, and I would say culture match plus one. Like, not only do they need to match the cultural values, if they're on your leadership team, you actually need to like them too. And that doesn't mean hang out with them every day after work, but that means you find them interesting, you find them funny, or you enjoy their company, where you're hanging out with them so much, or you're spending so much time with them. You have to really enjoy the time that you spend together.
I think you're right on point. How much time are you spending these days developing your number one team, your leadership team, making sure that it's as functional and high performing as it can be?
Not enough time.
Yeah, I get
it. From a development standpoint, they probably think they're probably developing me more than I'm developing them. But wow. I think that, listen, we brought on our first VP of People and Culture. Her name is Cindy Dunson. She was the VP of HR at Dogfish Head when they were at 50 employees, all the way up to 300 employees before the Boston Beer Company acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
She knows developing managers. She knows how to develop emerging leaders systematically. She knows how to bring in the right framework of predictive indexing to figure out how people work best with each other when there's different personalities and different communication styles. So there's a lot of leadership I'm placing on her in bringing in these I would almost call them modules, learning modules, into the organization to look at development really at every level, in a systematic and ongoing basis. Development is an ongoing thing.
It is. We had some pre-show time, and I was sharing with you that a lot of times you put that stuff in place, Mac, and then realize it needs to be reinforced, or realize that it didn't stick the first time. And I don't think it's ever done, because that team is constantly changing. You're changing people in and out. But I think, I'm sure you're modest, but we're all being developed by our number one teams, I think. I think that's when you know you're doing it right. So I give you credit to that. Just curious, did you always know you were going to start a business, or was that something that happened? Was there an event or something that triggered it for you, or did you wake up knowing you were going to do your own thing?
No, I didn't wake up knowing I was going to do my own thing. There was actually a lot of existential angst and anxiety during my college tenure, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life or where I wanted to place my focus. And, so no, there wasn't this clear sense of direction and far from it. It was, I had no idea what I wanted to do in the world. And I think that I'm lucky to have found my footing and to have developed a sense of direction and purpose. But no, you asked me in high school or freshman and sophomore year, you just would have gotten a dazed look and, I don't know.
or I want to skateboard, right?
Yeah.
I want to. Yeah. Well, I think I think I knew some of the answer behind this, but Mac, it does seem like you knew who you were, and maybe that was part of the figuring it out. You certainly know who you are today. What was that journey like related to this business thing? Tough question.
Yeah. And I think like who you are is also kind of dynamic. I think that you can have consistent values and beliefs in the world that remain static. And I think that would probably anchor your sense of identity into understanding who you are. And I think that remains consistent for me, where that's now in place. But as to other life factors and your outlook on things and how your priorities change over time, arguably a part of who you are. I think part of that is always kind of under construction. So you're always kind of dynamic in some senses. But overall, I think that, and we might be getting overly philosophical, but I think it's probably your values that primarily establish your understanding of who you are. And I think that when I developed a firm set of values and kind of what I stood for and what I cared about was probably early 20s, mid 20s, is when I realized I had to care, is when I realized that I value always learning. And I value just continuous growth. It just always improving, just being motivated by that for the sake of itself.
Having known you for a long time, you can see it. And it's not like you were some slouch back then. I can, when you just show up that way every day with that goal to learn and grow and knowledge, it's not your goal to pass people, but you do. And it's an interesting thing. But your comment about values is really important. There's a reason that most of the books and things that folks are reading from a self-help perspective, Mac, have a chapter on, hey, who are you? And do you spend time on you? And do you give yourself a half hour? And do you know what you stand for? Because if not, you're going to be distracted by shiny objects. And You're going to be chasing things you don't really want to do. So, and I think that's the point is, you know, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to grow a business? Well, you got to know who you are and what your values are to even know if that fits within it. But I asked the question in the beginning, kind of the big one. What do you think the tax is? What is the payment for birthing a company and getting it from where you got it to where you are? What's the tax?
Well, if you don't like, well, first of all, I would say there's many different styles of entrepreneurship, and so it depends on how hard you're trying to drive and where you're trying to drive the ship to. I mean, there's many people who might own a small business, Chris, and have a laundromat and a pizza shop, and they're an employee of their own company almost, where
Right.
the sake of the way they wear the responsibility is dramatically different, and the sense of ambition and where they're trying to drive to is very different. So I think when you ask what the price is of not being in that category and really trying to put the pedal to the metal and really trying to drive growth, create value, and ultimately enlarge in an organization, then you're giving up a lot of time. You're giving up a lot of energy. And I think that, the question you have to ask yourself is it worth it? And are you doing the right thing for yourself? Some people aren't cut out for it. Some people actually are not cut out for it, where like they're going through these daily gut punches. Like for some people, it's like a little tap on the shoulder, is the challenge and they roll through it. And for other people, a tap on the shoulder is a punch in the gut. And like they really just cannot stomach the level of challenges and, oh my God, this person's quitting. So what are we going to do? And like they're getting gray hair and they're getting sick. And other people just know.
Took me a long time, but I'm finally getting them there, Mac. I always said I gave them more than I got them, but the world's catching up with me a little bit there. But I think where you are is right on. I remember in the beginning, Mac, thinking every single problem was my own creation and I celebrated them. I was so excited because it wasn't a problem I was handed by someone else, right? By a manager, by another employee. It was like of my own creation, whether I messed something up or not. I was very excited about that. I know you've been at it long enough that I've told my story a bunch, but lots of time, lots of energy. How have you learned to take care of yourself and create a little bit of balance so that, what's that saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. You've been at it long enough that, you probably have had to replenish that cup a few times. How are you doing that these days? How do you take care of you?
Well, you do have to make time for it. It is a conscious effort. In the early days, myself and like you struggle to differentiate between the sprint and the marathon. Like, really, it is all a marathon. This whole thing is a marathon. And if you treat it like a sprint, you burn out. And then you start running again, and then you start sprinting again, and then you burn out. And it took me a while, and even I still struggle with that line today on how to pace properly and to level the highs and to control the lows and to properly pace. So I think first it's just a mindset thing, Chris. Like, I used to want to conquer every day. I used to want to win every day. Now it's you chip away at every day. But you don't win the day. Like you can win the year. You can have a good month, but you don't win a day. You chip away at big initiatives every day. So, first I think it's kind of right sizing and form fitting, how to approach a to-do list or your priorities. And
Yeah.
then it's giving yourself, or what I found is, I have 5 or 6 every day. I go do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. That's become a part of my like daily thing, um, where I'll do that for a couple of hours. Extremely meditative. Like all I'm thinking about is how to not get choked out or how to not let somebody break my arm. And
You
it's
have
fun.
to be there. You
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to be.
exactly. You have to be fully present when you're grappling. Like it's the gym I belong to is like a second family. Everybody's busting on each other and everybody, like, it's a fun time. It's a good group.
That's part of the outlet too.
Yeah. And I'll be fully present when I'm there. And then I come home, I take a shower, I eat dinner, and then I log back on for a bit and prep for the next day and catch up on emails and things that I missed from the day, and then rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. But like, is it sustainable? And yes, that style of work, uh, that work life balance is sustainable for me.
Yeah, Mac, I think about how hard I worked the first 16 years, 15 years. And I think how I had to modify. I mean, I did not have an off switch. I mean, I skipped holidays and weekends, but I know you have too. I know. I mean, I'd say that not as a badge of courage. I'm not proud of it any more than I think you're proud of it. You did what you had to do. You learn lessons and you grow and you modify. But I certainly went through that phase where I actually thought every hour I worked, I was creating stakeholder value. That was my mantra for a little while. It makes me feel a little silly today, but but for a little while, that was important to me. Um, you've experienced so much. What lessons do you like to teach? What stories do you like to tell?
I'll tell you what, like, I'm the student way more than the teacher. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
But just like, I take it day by day. I keep strong opinions loosely held. I love
Which is
learning,
a
and
value of your firm, correct?
it is, yeah. And care, have an opinion, like stand for something, but also be quick to abandon it and adopt the strongest truth. There's
Okay.
multiple perspectives, there's multiple right answers. Who has the best answer?
Hmm.
Adopt the best answer. That's how you play to win.
Your values are great leadership. Holy moly. Great change. I like them.
Thanks. Um, yeah, Greg and I just sat down in a restaurant one day when we knew we needed to codify our values, and we're like, okay, like, what do me and you actually really care about, and like, how do we like operating? And like, I'll tell you, we came to our values within like 30 minutes of back. Like, it wasn't very difficult to get out on paper. It took some time to like fine tune it and polish it
Of
and make
course.
it short and succinct. But like, the bullet points on what our operating code was and like the values we wanted to see, live inside the organization were actually pretty easy to arrive at.
Mac, it's funny. I've helped people where it's taken 4 years to codify them, but I'm not surprised to hear you say that you did it the way you did it. Mine also came together. I had like 4 or 5 people in a conference room, and in like an hour, we had them all written down. Um, no consultant, no leadership team, just, the same kind of thing like you and Greg did, which I don't know if there's a right or wrong, because I think a lot of people are getting there in different ways, Uh, most times I find people, well, you don't have core values. Well, you actually do. They're just not stated, that trust me, they're here. And that usually gets people to think about what they want them to be or what they actually are. And are they changeable when they are what they are? Are you? I know you're an avid reader. Um, any books on your mind today that you want to talk about? Uh,
Sure. I mean, if I have a very eclectic taste in books, so I
that's
can
why
tell
you
you.
got asked. That's why you got asked that question, Mac. I know that.
So, I mean, what I literally just finished last night or 2 nights ago was a book about the artist Paul Gauguin, which he was a contemporary artist during the time frame of Impressionism. So
Mm-hmm.
Monet, Camille, Degas, Pissarro. Who else was in that? Monet was the 800-pound gorilla.
Sure.
Vincent Van Gogh, same time frame. Paul Gauguin actually stayed at Vincent Van Gogh's house when he lived in Arles, France, and essentially he was just a horrible human being as a person and a degenerate dad who just had kids
So,
willy-nilly, did not take care of his family, had God complex, thinking he was bigger than life and that he was the ultimate artist. Also, though, phenomenally talented artist, just like many many of these celebrity athletes that you see, and the Floyd Mayweathers, the Conor McGregors, that their ego. The only thing that might rival their ego is their actual skill level, where their skill level is actually is at the top. And
so
that
what's
was
the name of the book? We'll make sure it's in the liner notes for the show.
here. It's called Gauguin: His Life and Works in 500 Images. And
There you go.
it's a really cool book about it, and it shows his paintings and what was happening at that period of time when he painted that, and the letter correspondence he was sending to his wife, and he was just like a really interesting guy. I can't say like I value or I admire him as a person, but like his work is phenomenal.
So why'd you pick that book up? Was it looking for artistic inspiration, or was it somebody gave it to you? Just curious.
Well, I've heard my mom is an artist, and I've heard her
Okay.
talk about Paul Gauguin a lot.
Yeah.
And then I went to the Philadelphia Art Museum a couple weekends ago, and I
Okay.
really, really enjoyed looking at the art from the Impressionism period, roughly like 1880 to 1910, that emanated out of Paris, France. Like, I really enjoyed how they painted, and I thought it was beautiful, and I wanted to learn more about kind of this movement. And I knew Paul Gauguin he had pictures up there, and so I just Amazoned him, found a book that was well rated, and took a chance, and ended up really
There you
liking
go. I like that.
it. But like,
You got
yeah,
one. You got one more you want to. Yeah.
go ahead.
How about one? How about one more you want to chat about?
The book that I now picked up since I put that one down is called it's called The Sea and Civilization: A Maritime History of the World. It's by a guy named Lincoln Payne, and I can't speak too much about it because I'm
No, I
30.
got it. You're a day in. That
But the premise of the book, Chris, is we talk about world history a lot,
yes.
but really world history is a heavy influencer of what we consider world history is what's going on in these seas, and how 70% of our 70% of our world covered in ocean has had a gigantic impact, and continues to, on political structures, demographics, economics, like the movement of goods, the movement of people. And actually, typically maritime history has tended to be around like countries. It would view the maritime history of Great Britain. It would view the maritime history of Spain or Portugal. But rarely does anybody take a stance of looking at maritime history without the lens of nationality.
Without the rise of the nationality.
Yeah, it's like, well,
Yeah.
just talk about all activity that was happening at this time
Oh, interesting.
and how it evolved on a macro level. So I'm at the very beginning of it, but like it's hard to put it down. This is the type of book I really like, where it's like a very niche perspective on something. It's like a whole new set of glasses to put on world outlook. And
But I think the point there is taking information in like that, and how it changes your lens about an opportunity or a problem you're dealing with. I think, like, isn't that what knowledge is, right? It it's hard to be ignorant when you're learning that kind of stuff, Mac. It broadens the perspective.
Totally. I've been told that I'm forgetful, and I think it could be selective memory a lot of times, but I do think even if you don't remember everything that you read, there's not 100% absorption rate. Like if you're understanding and you follow along, like it's helping open up neural pathways for how your mind thinks and interprets things. And so I think it conditions your mind well.
I so often think about that I don't have that memory for the paragraph or the it frustrates me because I want to be able to recall it. I read that poetry and I want to be able to recite it. But you're right, it sticks with you. So a couple of fun questions.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
21. So when I was first starting the business,
yes.
Buckle up. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
There you go. Back to the theme, marathon, not a sprint.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Find good mentors that you admire quickly, or the right ones. Like prioritize finding good mentors, and know that it's not a race. Like it's not who gets there first. It's build it the right way, do things the right way, and enjoy the process as you do it. And not everything is going to be Skittles and rainbows, like there's going to be challenges, there's going to be setbacks.
I'm sure I like Skittles and rainbows, anyway, but
it's not all going to be smiles and happiness and, kumbaya. There's shit's going to hit the fan. So, be prepared for that and know that's a part of the process.
What do you think you would be doing if you weren't running Carvertise?
Never really thought about that before.
And that's okay. That's good radio. I finally stumped you with a question you haven't thought about, right?
I would if I just hopped out of Carvertise tomorrow, I would have to start something. I would have to build something. I would have to join someone building something.
Right.
Like that. I would need a big challenge. Like I know that my professional love language or what gives me, purpose and passion is like, I need a big mountain to climb to be engaged and interested.
Some would say you're crazy to hear that, but you know yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be a big mountain purpose. It's got to be very relevant.
Yeah, it's got to be exciting. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be something I care about, so whatever it would be, Chris, it would be difficult.
Yeah.
It would be difficult, it would be hard, but it would be meaningful. And I would have to think I'm making a positive difference.
Amen to that.
And I would have to wake up inspired, every morning and passionate about what I'm getting to.
So I started with the question that there's a price to pay. Bring us home. Summarize what the price to pay is in your thoughts, and feel free to give any advice or make any comments you like. I know you prefer to be the student than the teacher, but use the platform to share.
Nothing too profound here, Chris, which is just gonna strike it home. But I think listen. I think that if you're driving hard, you're building big, that's clearly going to take a lot of time and energy and effort. And that clearly has to come at some type of compromise and trade-off to what you would be doing otherwise. And that might be hiking, and that might be biking, or that may be hanging out with your best friend. And, building something big requires a big investment in your time and energy, which comes at a compromise. So it's got to be worth it enough to you to do that compromise. So the price to pay is whatever you're willing to pay to get where you're trying to go.
And that's an equation that's constantly changing.
And if that ratio is off, well, then you got to adjust. Like if you're not spending enough time with your wife or your husband, and then you got to toggle it back a little bit. If peace at home and that healthy relationship needs tending to, then you got to adjust. So the price to pay is whatever you're willing to pay for.
Yeah. And I like the theme of where you started with, like, you're at a task level in the beginning, out in front with the sword, teaching people how to swashbuckle. And then now you're thinking about weeks and months and quarters and years and getting things done through people. I think that's an incredibly strong and powerful reflection. That's what I take. I still like to swing the sword, Mac. So I think it's great advice. It's great advice.
Listen, there's a time and place for that too. That doesn't mean
you're right.
You're this administrative sitting in a boardroom all day.
Amen.
There's still a time and a place where you absolutely have to do that. I did that twice today, where I did. I knew I did very front of the line type of work, but I think that was the right thing to do. From my seat at that moment in time. Situational leadership, I think that's where my head's at. It's very situational.
So, Mac, it's a story that's unfolding. Love to have you back once a year if you'd be game. Pick up on the themes, situational leadership changes. We can weave a lot of good stuff in. And I appreciate you're busy. Appreciate you taking the time. I know it can be a bit cathartic to tell your story and, think about different stuff. We always do get questions. So if you'd like, if you're open to being reached out to, I know you're a constant mentor and coach to some. I think you could probably expect some folks that might like to talk to you from this. And
sure, email is my last name, Macleod, Macleod, at Carvertise.com. Shoot me a note.
We'll put that in the liner notes. Thank you, Mac. If you like this content, we would ask that you subscribe to the channel wherever you can get your podcast or listening at the moment. As always, feel free to leave a review as well. That would really help us out. If you'd like to send me a note or check out my company Placers or my personal website, the links are in the show notes, and we'll be able to help you out with that.